I am so privileged, and it is such a joy for me to get to share this experience with you. And I say experience, I mean it, of being with my dear pal and the amazing, fabulous actress and mindset coach, Kim Coles.
Learn the ways of the goddess and accomplish much more with so much less effort. Welcome to Your Goddess Awakened with Halle, Eavelyn, a show dedicated to helping you embrace your divine feminine and nurture your inner goddess for a radiant life. We invite you to join us every week to receive goddess wisdom that will help you through your current obstacles and lifelong traumas. Awaken the goddess within you and transform your business and your life, only here on Your Goddess Awakened.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Goddess Awakened. Kim, welcome to Your Goddess Awakened.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I don't know if you remember, I actually have a tattoo of the word goddess. Wait, let me turn it the right way. So we know that I am in the right place. Thank you, Halle, for having me.
So I'm so excited to get to talk to you about all the things today. So Kim and I met in Egypt. We were on a trip together that I was co-leading with Elizabeth Purvis, the magnificent Elizabeth, who you have probably already met on another episode if you did not know of her beforehand. And you can look up and see Kim's background is just, I mean, it just speaks for itself. As our pal Rachel says, you should GTS Kim. Kim, do you know what that means?
Google that shit.
That's right. That's right.
One of my favorite terms.
I know. It's like all the kids have those acronyms now. Never mind. Anyway, I want to talk about the journey that you've taken. I mean, you were a comedian, then you were an actress, now you're a coach. Explain about that, because I feel like a lot of women they're kind of scared to step out into their stuff. And, you know, just between us girls, I know you were as well. So share some of that experience.
You know, it's interesting, and something just hit me that hadn't hit me before, which always happens when I'm with you, Halle, because you bring out the best in others, is that the truth is that for me, I think that it's been a layering all along. So I think many of us, as we're searching for deeper purpose and to really do the work that we're here to do, and, you know, all of those kinds of conversations, like, am I really happy? And how can I get, you know, more? I realize that everything that I've ever done sits on top of everything else I've ever done, right? And so that it becomes layering, and it becomes, and it so happens I happen to be still an actress. I happen to still be a comedian. And I've taken all of those experiences plus life, and added it into this newer way of being, which I realized that I was doing all along anyways. I love story. I love the power of story. And I love helping people use their powerful, unique stories and journey to then share with others and help them along their journey. So being a storyteller and then teaching people how to tell their stories in an effective way, I like to call it helping you to broadcast your brilliance. So that the bottom line is that if everything that's happened to you has actually happened for you, then it is a layering, and you get to add it on and then keep growing and ascending into the best version of yourself. And so I'm at this place, and I'm so grateful for you and grateful for that trip to Egypt. That trip to Egypt was pivotal for me in awakening and opening and stepping into, and, you know, sometimes you're still a little afraid, but I'm more afraid of staying the same than I am growing into something bigger, stronger, faster, better, that and serving from that place. That's the whole thing, that it's really not even about me. It's like, I came here to do this work. Now I'm doing the work. And so that was a long answer to this question of this, giving yourself permission to take all of your experiences and letting them send you, be part of the journey along the way,
Yeah, I totally do. I mean, remember, I started as an actress, and then I moved into software development, and then I was in real estate, and then I was in spiritual travel. And then, like, if you took all of that and rolled it up like a big carpet and dropped it in my lap, that was all my experience for me to be a coach, right? I use every single last bit of it. We all get to show up fully. Your present moment is your only point of power, showing up with all of that stuff behind us. And that's the thing that made us ready for that piece that we stepped into, right? And I got to really watch you in one exact moment that I'm thinking of fully step into who you were. And I'm delighted if you would tell that story for people, because it's just my favorite.
It involved a temple, a whole lot of sweat, and a decision and a realization of a decision, so here we are. And you always remind me that it was Edfu temple, so beautiful. And by the way, Africa is Africa hot. Like I love to tell the story that when I got off the plane, my menopause said, oh, you're in Africa now. We're going to leave you alone. You're going to have enough heat on your own. If you get hot, it's not us.
Tell me the story that I want to hear.
The story that you want to hear has to do with a temple, some menopause, and an awakening. So we were at Edfu Temple, and I want to start by saying, when I got off the plane in Egypt, my menopause said to me, oh, it's so hot here. We're going to leave you alone. So when you get hot and start to sweat, it ain't us. It's Africa. It's just letting you know. So here I am in Mother Africa, which is beautiful. And everybody is like, welcome home, welcome home. And I'm getting kisses and love. And we're going from temple to temple and having these great awakenings and great moments. And this particular temple, Edfu, I was just so hot and so done. And by done, I mean, I was baked in terms of just all the awakenings that were happening. It was just so much was happening. And I was going through a time in my life where I needed things to happen. So like it needed to be an awakening. And it was just, physically, I was, having problems. I had gained weight. You had said on the brochure to exercise before you get here, start walking before you get here. I was like, I walked through enough airports, I'll be fine. So my body was going, no mas. My menopause was like, it ain't us. And not to mention, I got my hair done in this very elaborate, faux goddess locks with just like 10 tons of hair, so I could look even more African, So I'm hot and I'm, it's just a lot. And so we finished our, beautiful ceremony, and all the sisters were there, and we had our meditation, and they begin to leave one by one. And my water is so hot that I can't even drink it. I'm like, oh, I should put a tea bag in it because it's hot now. So there was no relief whatsoever. And you, in your very Halle, you come from love, but you don't mince words. You say you come from, it's love, but it's real. And you're like, I can see that you want to give up. And I was like, how could she read my mind? You want to give up, and you can, that's a choice. But, this is a moment, and what are you going to do at this moment? And, how you move your body and how you're moving in your world is really a choice up to you. Or you could go and walk back to the bus, and it's air conditioned and we'll wait for you. But this is it. And I don't remember what you always remember more than I do in that moment. I just remember this like, oh, I've got a decision to make, and I can give up, but is that really the choice that I want to do? And it was a physical thing. It was a spiritual thing. It was decisions I needed to make about my current marriage that was not working. And it was just like everything came to, ahead. And then you said to me, honey, you're so hot. Do you just want to, when we get back to the boat, I'll help you cut those extensions out. And I was like, oh, now you've gone too far. What? How could you? And what's funny about you, Halle, is you've been around a lot of Black women, a lot of Black sisters. Like, what that means. Like, how
right.
Like, you should really know that would be how quel horror. And no matter what I was going through in my marriage, or that my body was like, like giving out on me because I hadn't done what I needed to do, just like cutting out the hair was like, what? And I really think that it was a pivotal moment that, and then you told me, my memory is that you said, honey, you look like you're like 20 years older than you are right now. And I was like,
I believe I said something even more horrifyingly offensive. I said to you, you look ancient right now.
You said, honey,
and yeah,
you look ancient right now.
Yeah. And you turned toward me, and it was like looking at like the gravitas of like Cicely Tyson in one of her most magnificent roles. But you looked up at me, and I was like, I saw what you would look like at 100. I saw but it was also like the wisdom of the ancients. And it was this kind of timeless, like this was a woman who had been oppressed for lifetimes, was what my sense was in that moment. So I feel like you made a decision, not like just in that moment for you about your marriage, or am I ever going to walk out of this room, or anything like that. It was also like a kind of a legacy decision. Like, am I going to be this woman who is stuck in just enough, just okay, just good enough? Or am I going to step fully into this magnificence that is my goddess self, right? So yeah, that was my awareness in that at that time.
And something, I don't think you've ever even explained it to me that deeply. And keep in mind that all those roles you talk about where Cicely Tyson was playing this ancient person, she was wearing tons of makeup. Like, she wasn't old at those times. She wasn't ancient at those times. And so I do remember that moment and saying, do not get insulted by this. You just said, right, you look ancient. But here's the thing about that. We have all seen women walking down the street, and I'm present to this. Walking across the street is where I always see these women. Like, she's walking across the street and I go, there but for the grace of God go I. She is belabored by life. She's made certain decisions and not made other decisions. And I can even see sometimes it's my body type, my age, my race, my whatever. She could be completely different than me, but I can see that if she had a different opportunity, asked a different set of questions, been given a different space, how would she have turned out? And I see that in that moment, that was the decision, that I could keep going like this, or I could make a real, you're right, a legacy decision. And it was that moment that things really began to turn. And what's interesting about this trip is because we were being so physical, my body did get better. Because that moment I was making that decision, I was beginning to feel better. And I can remember walking out of the Great Pyramid. And I love telling you, and I love bragging about being the last girl in the Great Pyramid that day, because it took me that long to back myself out. I didn't climb down. I climbed backwards out. I was the last girl in the pyramid that day. So for a brief shining moment, I had the Great Pyramid all to myself. And I remember going back to our hotel and going to the restroom and freshening up and looking in the mirror, and I had never looked younger. I looked refreshed and young and felt vibrant and felt ready to take on the next piece of my life. So those two experiences side by side.
Oh, I just got all chills. I have full body chills there. That's wonderful.
So
that's wonderful. Well, and I remember all of the other women on the trip, because that was a woman's only journey. When you came to breakfast, everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, look at you! You look amazing!" As you came out of the Great Pyramid that day for our final initiation. So yeah, that was a really powerful thing. You reminded me though, when I was with my ex, and we were together almost 25 years, and then I met my girlfriend, and I really came to that crossroads of, am I staying or am I going? And I remember doing a spirit session, because as you may remember, he and I used to do the channeling sessions together, because he channeled the Great White Brotherhood or the Great White Lodge, and I would facilitate all of those sessions. And so I asked him, could we do a spirit session? Because he knew I was like at this crossroads and trying to make this decision. And, to his it's a great compliment to me that he was willing to do this. Because it could have meant I would get to the end and go, hey, I'm going to leave now, which is exactly what happened. But I said to them, should I stay or should I go? And of course, they said the thing they always say, which is the lesson is in the choosing. It's your choice that will guide you. You know, as you were saying about that woman on the street, what if she had made this decision instead of this one? What if she had asked this set of questions instead of this one? Which I think is so brilliant that you said that, because I really feel like that's where the rubber meets the road. And that day when I asked that question, they gave me a little bit more than that answer. The next thing they said to me was, you can stay. If you stay, you will stay small. And that is a choice. And it was that moment that I decided to leave. I was on the fence. I was hoping to not have to go. I was hoping for like some miraculous resolution that would not involve me giving up my 4-bedroom house and my 3 dogs and my person that I had loved since I was 23 years old, and moving 3,000 miles across the country and starting my life over again with no money in my pocket. I was hoping for all of those things. Didn't happen. Right. I wanted to live in LA my whole life. You know, I didn't know you then, but we were neighbors. I could come over to your house right now for coffee. We could have done this in person. But no, I had to move to Miami because I was just getting this huge call. And so often we women really get it in our heads that it's not okay for us to make these choices for ourselves. And my experience working with women who tend to skew older is, we will also get to a point where we go, hey, I'm 40 now, or hey, I'm 50 now, or I'm 60, or I'm 70, or whatever the age is, where we go, this isn't okay anymore. This is, my life for me. And that's where you get that idea that, as I say all the time, you're a sovereign entity. Mm-hmm. And that's where that energy starts to shift.
And all kinds of amazing things happen as a result of that. Like my life, let me say this, and I've taken lots of training, even since we've talked last,
Mm-hmm.
really personal development and spiritual work and all of that. And there is a world in which I could have tried to stay in my marriage and tried to work on it. I ended up developing a set of skills. I now have a toolbox for better communication, a toolbox for better questions. But I got them now, so oops, too late. But I remember all the times that I requested better communication, requested, let's try to work this out. I just don't think that the person that he was and the person that I was were meant to be together. And here's how I know now. He is so happy right now. He's happy. We just Facebook messaged yesterday.
Oh, really?
I needed to send him, I mailed him the divorce papers. He never got them. I scanned them and sent them. He has a new almost wife. I questioned the amount of time with which this relationship happened. He has a new baby boy. The timing is a little interesting. That's what,
well, honey, you broke up more than 9 months ago, right?
Right.
Well, that's good.
And their relationship, there's some time that could have been overlap, and I don't even care. I don't care, because more importantly, I'm so happy. I found what I didn't even know I was able to have, or I had permission to have. I had what I didn't realize I was saying to the universe, God, goddess, the creator, however you language it. I didn't realize I was, as Esther would say, shooting arrows of desire. Is that how she says it?
Rockets of desire. Yeah.
Rockets of desire.
Yeah.
I was shooting rockets and arrows and bullets and bombs of desire. It was a battlefield of desire, because what I asked for, I got in spades and in abundance. And so I'm happier. So maybe I needed to go through that. You know how as human beings, we make meaning out of things. maybe I needed to go through that so that I could have this richer, more fulfilling experience, and more importantly, a richer, full experience of myself. So it all matters. Just like I said before, what if everything that's happened to you has happened for you? I'll take it all if this is part of the journey, as long as I'm learning and ascending and integrating as I go along the way. And I'm now not nearly as afraid of the breakthroughs that come. In fact, there was a breakthrough that happened today. I mean, like on the bed, boo-hooing, weeping today. I needed to get it. Yeah. And, one of my issues, and I'll be transparent, has been money, and I've made lots and lots and lots of it. And yet I have areas of money that need to be healed. And there were boundaries that need to happen. And there was a big boundary that came up. And I was like, I need to let this person know that that ain't okay. And I had to boo-hoo it out and take responsibility for my side of it. And that felt good, even though it felt icky. It felt better than it would have if I continued to put my head in the sand about it. And so now maybe it's an age thing. I'm going to be 60 in a little while.
No, you're not.
I'm going to be 60 in January 2022. Wow,
that's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing.
And I embrace it all because it's all worth embracing.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, I've seen such a beautiful growth arc in the years that we have known each other, and I'm really so proud of you for all of those changes and those shifts. I want to talk about, this is your Goddess Awakens. This is about like coming into the goddess of you, right? But I want to talk about what it's like for you in this world that we're in today. There have been so many shifts. I mean, I saw current episodes this last week, and now by the time this airs, will probably be a couple months old, but Grey's Anatomy and Station 19, which are both from Shondaland. So that's Shonda Rhimes. We've been about they're dealing with the riots, the protests, the George Floyd murder. There was a sequence with the Station 19, which is about a firehouse in Seattle, and you watch the cast sitting together reacting to, they do not show you any footage of George Floyd being murdered, but you see them sitting there watching in shock and in agony as they go through it. And it was really a powerful choice. Shondaland has also recently been in the news a lot because of the casting for Bridgerton, which envisions a world where there are Black people who were elevated to royalty on the flimsy, but from the looks of the paintings, probably pretty accurate evidence that Queen Charlotte was at least part Black, and creates a society where Black people have been elevated to a status equal to whites, are property owners, are landed gentry. And I remember seeing that first scene of Bridgerton and just like starting to cry, because it felt like somewhere on some plane a wrong had been righted. And so I want to know, like, how does this feel for you as a Black woman? And, what advice do you have for the rest of us who really need to be treading lightly in this circumstance?
It's such a big question, and it's such a big moment, and it's such a big thing that's happening. There's a great awakening, right? To even more so to all kinds of injustice, right? They've always been there, and sometimes have been quieted, and sometimes have been under the surface, and now it's just in your face, and that causes problems for people, for all sides, right? So I'll just speak to the Bridgerton thing for just a moment. When I saw Queen Charlotte, I was like, oh, she went there, because I have known and have heard and have wondered about this potential queen who was mixed, who was mulatto, who was, of African descent. And that picture sure looks like she's a sister to me. And there are, if you go down that road, it's really incredible. Birds of paradise, the flower birds of paradise, were created for her. They were named after her, not because she was a bird of paradise, but she wore all those crazy wigs were real and all that crazy. So if you look up, there was a botanist, and she was very much into botany, and she had beautiful gardens. And the birds of paradise that we love in our gardens, there's some in my front yard right now,
Mine too.
were created for her. And there's so much more. And she was influential in many other ways. And so I was like, she went there. And there were some people who were like, this is ridiculous. How could there have been a Black queen? If you look there, it's available. If you do your homework, it's available.
Mm-hmm.
There have been many stories of accomplishments of people of color that have been squashed. And
yes.
And it's really hard. It's really hard for us to learn this. There's like this history that we learned in school. And if you're a certain age, there are things that they didn't talk about in school. Let's talk about Egypt. I was taught that Egypt, there's Africa, and then there's Egypt. Like, and if you looked at the map, and as a kid, I was like, but Egypt is in Africa, right? But there's a whole other thing. Oh, that's another thing. It's just sort of a part of all of it and a part of what we know. And some of us, I've processed it in a way where I just go, fortunately or unfortunately, I grew up in a household where we were taught not to be angry or not to show our anger out or to protest in that way. We were taught to protest by getting educated, protest by carrying yourself a certain way, protest by learning your history. My mother was a teacher, and therefore we had access to knowledge and information that she made sure that my brother and I knew, so that we knew from whence we came. And to just always be excellent when I'm out there. But my way is not the way of fight or protest in that way. The way I protest is be excellent. And the way I protest is using my gifts to help elevate other women of color and other people as well. So it's really a swirl of complexities. And then comes this conversation of having to decide whether or not we educate our white sisters. And then we put them into categories. There's allies and people who aren't allies. But by the way, I see you totally as an ally. Only an ally could say, honey, do you want me to cut that hair out of you, cut those extensions out of your head? Only an ally could offer to do that. And I'd be okay with it, right? So it's complex. And I just think we need to keep talking. I think we need to keep talking and understanding. I think, compassion is so needed, to have, for those of you who are our allies and those of us who are not our allies, to be willing to have eyes of compassion, that you can only imagine what it's like to walk into a shop, even though you've been on a TV show for years, and for people to follow you around, and it has nothing to do with, oh, by the way, can I take a picture with you? Like, I've had that experience while I was quote unquote Kim Coles. They were following me because I was a Black girl. And so I can't even explain to you what that wells up. And in my case, like I said, I was taught not to protest, just walk out of the store. Well, you don't get my money, but you also, a little piece of me dies inside. So it's so complex. We just have to keep talking. We have to keep having dialogue and create space, create boundaries for when it's just not okay to keep putting us down, when it's just not okay to keep expecting the worst from us. You're all, whatever list of things people call people of color, what.
What do you mean when it is? It's always not okay. Like, where would there be a world where where any level of that should be acceptable? I mean, the thing that I've been struck by,
and maybe I worded that wrong, so I will stand in correction. I didn't mean when. I mean, you're right, it's all the time, but open up dialogue. So yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. I mean, for me, the question is always, if this person were white, would this be okay? If this person were if this person were a person of not that color, not a particular color, but if this person were, the majority color, which is the white color, right? The color of privilege, would this conversation, would this interaction, would that treatment of them be acceptable? On that episode of Grey's Anatomy, they showed one of the Black doctors whose fiance was another Black doctor. He's driving up to meet her, and they're going to be reunited, and he's moving to Seattle. And the police pull him over and proceed to he disappears off the radar. She tries to get him to stay on the phone, and he's not allowed to by the cop. And then she goes through 45 minutes of sheer terror until she's finally able to get a hold of him. She's like, why was it so long? And then they pan to the outside of his car where they had everything in his, he was moving his entire life in the back of his car, and the whole thing is out now in boxes on the side of the road because the police unpacked everything and made the dog sniff. And the first thought that I had is that would never happen to a white person in a million years.
But that's your thought, and you are awakened, and we need more conversations like this, more awakenings, more compassion, more willing to look at it from that perspective. What would your life be like if all the time? And I think, you could argue that Black women have it a little bit easier than Black men. There are mothers who are like, I send my Black boy out into the world, and I don't know what's going to happen I don't know if he's going to come home to me. The sheer terror of that, and like, how did we? I don't understand how we became the worst of the worst. Like, we didn't even ask to come here? I mean, we can go down all those roads. So it's compassion, and it's actually more than compassion. It's that, would this be happening if that person were white? And the outrage that would happen. And then we're not even allowed to be outraged. People say that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group. It's like, how is it terrorism?
And Antifa, which stands for anti-fascist, which is people against fascism. How did that become a terrorist group? Oh, just the amount of
that either. I've never gotten that. Like, so you're saying you want fascism? Is that what you're saying?
Right. No, the whole thing is just crazy. And I realized that the Black Lives Matter, all lives matter conversation can be solved with one word. Are you ready? I figured it out.
Go.
We need to say Black Lives Matter too, because that's really what the Black Lives Matter movement is. Nobody is saying other lives don't matter. They're just saying, and our lives also matter, and everyone's life should matter. And
but people saw that as an attack, and
excuse me, people were educated to see that as an attack. That's the thing. That's the same thing with Antifa. The idea that an anti-fascist movement would be seen as fascist.
Is it cognitive dissonance? Is it people not educating themselves? Is it, you're the other?
Is it deliberate misinformation by the people who are in power? And look, I'm not going to say, it's only men. I've seen a ton of when Trump was president, and there was that whole, you can grab my pussy anytime, Mr. President t-shirt or whatever, and all those women wearing it. And I was like, so we're so against ourselves that we don't even know that we're against ourselves. Oh, just hard. But
I wondered at that time, those women who have, those women like that, and who have been, women for Trump. I wondered if they were doing that, if there's a number of them that were doing that so they could keep the protection of their men. In other words, look at me, I'm on your side, but really I'm not. But I'm on your side, darling, but really I'm not. Was that part of it?
I don't know, maybe 10%, maybe, but honestly, mostly it's the fact that we need to start raising our girls and our boys differently. Because if our girls were raised differently, that wouldn't be okay with them. And if our boys were raised differently, they wouldn't be treating women the way that, would cause the entire Me Too movement to finally happen, and things would start to change.
What I was going to say to you is, I remember years and years and years ago, there was a time, it was either Time or Life. Life is gone now, right? Life magazine article, cover. And the cover was a picture of a brown, very tan person. And I think that the headline was "The Darkening of America," or something like that. That eventually in this world, because we're commingling the way we are, and because we're all, I love teasing my brother and saying, "Oh, I've got a little beige nephew because my sister-in-law is white and my nephew is beige and he's beautiful," right? That eventually, there will be less white people in the world. And in fact, if you really look at the numbers, around the world, there are less white people than there are people of color. If you include Asians and Indians and and Africans, like if you really add it up, it's the tide is it's already turned, it's
already turned.
Already.
Yes.
And so I wonder if there's a piece that's like, oh my goodness, eventually we're going to be obsolete one day or something. I don't know.
Of course, the power struggle of the ruling class is always to stay relevant and to stay in power. Absolutely. Which brings us to the goddess and the concept of the sacred divine feminine in all of this. And the fact that the sacred divine feminine has been removed from our society to the detriment, to the demise of that element that says we will raise our boys to be better than this. We will raise our girls to value themselves more than this. And our society will not be allowed to go lowest common denominator. That is all going to come from the infusion back into our society of, the Dalai Lama said the Western woman will save the world, right?
So the question I have for you is, and I know that you educate about this, you educate and you're an evangelist for this. What happened? When did it turn? And maybe this is a longer conversation. When was the divine feminine excluded? And it's one of the reasons why, and I'm not out about this, and I think in the coming years and maybe even months and weeks, I'm going to have to come out more about this. I'm very quiet about this. And again, it's the household I was, don't talk about, just go ahead and feel how you want to feel, but don't talk too much about it. It's one of the reasons why there's certain spiritual texts I'm just not a fan of. I can't get into it because so much was taken out of the divine feminine, and you cannot have the masculine without the feminine. So do you have a 3-sentence answer for why it was removed and why we're so dangerous?
So, why are we so dangerous? Because, we have minds of our own and thoughts of our own. So if the shortest version of this is that the first episode of Your Goddess Awakened, which is called God's Wife, talks about this exactly. It talks of the whole episode is about how the sacred divine feminine was excised and about the concept that God had a wife at one time. In fact, she still appears in the Bible, and her name was Asherah. And there are places where Asherah has not been quite excised from the Bible, so you can go look at that. But there was a deliberate in the men in charge, right? The priests were like, let's take the women out. Now, they didn't take out Esther and Ruth or whoever, but these were wives and mothers. They took out the women who were in power, so to speak. And the idea that the creator, if everything in the world from, babies, any kind of babies on down, like requires and seahorses are capable of, mating with themselves. So there are definitely some exceptions. But if the idea behind creation is the masculine and the feminine, right? The sperm and the egg, the creative power and the execution power, the power of, like completion, the receiving power with the giving power, like you have this, like, the masculine and the feminine are woven through all of creation. So if that's true, how come except for God, and then later except for Jesus, which is all like, another episode of the show, I talk about this woman who came into my inbox right after the first episode and said, "You're wrong." And I'm like, let me read this letter. And she said, God did have a wife and her name was Mary. And I'm like, wait, God married Mary? Like, how did I miss that one in the Bible? So people have like their belief, and don't you mess with that belief, right? But it's from over 2,000 years of having the goddess excised. And there are statues of the goddess that date back a couple 100,000 years, and they're like the Venus of Willendorf was supposed to be, like they've carbon dated the Venus of Willendorf piece, but they've also found one that's like a lot older that they say again is supposedly 200,000 years old, that looks exactly like the style of Venus of Willendorf, which is a very voluptuous woman, what we would call a fat woman with these giant dugs for breasts and this round little head. And she's just like, she is, you just want to squeeze her in all the places. Anyway, so and apparently the goddess was all that was depicted for thousands of years until we got to this idea of, of civilization, and the Bible was written down and all of that. And there were a couple of councils, the Council of Chalcedon, the Council of Nicaea, and I want to say those are in like the 4th century and maybe the 6th century AD, but I'm saying this from memory, so I'm not 100% sure about these dates, but fairly recently after the Bible was completed. And remember, the Bible was not written in Jesus's lifetime. The Bible was not even written like right after Jesus's lifetime. So they came in within a couple 100 years and said, right, Mary was a whore, right? There is no
is to blame for everything.
Everything.
As a little girl, I was like, so let me see if I get this straight. You're blaming everything on her? As a little girl, yeah. Because
God forbid the man should like have his own like free will and make his own decisions, and the woman would have hers and make her own decision. Yeah, the whole thing has been corrupted. But my favorite resource on this topic is Tricia McCannon's Return of the Divine Sophia. And that's actually on the Your Goddess Awakened reading list. And Return of the Divine Sophia is extremely well researched. Tricia is a dear friend, and that woman she knows her stuff. And she really talked a lot about this evisceration, like a deliberate cutting out of the sacred divine feminine. And there are pieces that like just took my breath away about men who were Catholic saints, canonized. And they said like one of these saints, and I know I've talked about this in another episode, but it just frosts my tail. One of these men who became a saint said, like, a woman is I'm trying to remember it exactly, like a beautiful exterior over an open sewer. What? And they were all saying you do not want to be with women except for sex and to bear your children. Period. The end. Like, no woman's thought should be considered. No woman's like ideas should be considered. No woman should have any place of power anywhere. And men just walked around that way. I went to an event last night, my first event since COVID. We were all socially distanced. It was a beautiful thing. And I sat with 4 men at a table, and one of them was a hedge fund guy, and one of them was a lawyer, and one of them was a creator of a conscious give back society on like Amazon, but like giving you back a lot of the money of it. And one guy was a guy who was moving into Miami for like opening up cell phone distribution with taking cell phones to Europe. And so I'm sitting in front of these 4 guys. And at one point we were talking about money and cryptocurrency. And at one time I said to them, y'all know what year women could get their own bank accounts without their husbands and their fathers? And they all kind of looked at me. And then one of the men goes, 19, sounds like really late. 1960 maybe. And I said 1972. And they were all like, what? And I looked at them and I said, you guys, you've never had to worry about your money or your job or what you were saying or doing in regards to money and whether that was okay. And I said, women have a legacy over thousands of years where it wasn't even okay for us to have our own money, let alone be bright enough to spend it ourselves. So all of this to me is like the exact same conversation, and I'm getting off my soapbox right now. So,
I love it. But it started by you saying the divine feminine is awakening, even or the idea that it's required and needed and desired and wanted is coming through more and more and more and more. And I think what you're saying is we need to step into it more and embrace it more. And it's so much better when we're around and when we are encouraged to, when you invite us to the table, it's always better. It has to be, because of who we are and what we bring, and the smarts that we bring, the wisdom that we bring, and that whole experience. Isn't it? I think Kiva, wasn't Kiva, the company that makes micro loans.
One of them, yeah.
One of them, right? And the whole theory is that if you educate a woman, or if you let a woman in those spaces have money to buy a cow, or money to build something or save something, that it actually feeds and helps the entire village. That she's going to, and I'm not saying that men don't, but we know that if you give a woman an opportunity that way, that is more likely that all will benefit in that way. And so that to me is the divine feminine.
Absolutely. And that reminds me of something that I tell all of my coaching clients. Probably you've heard this before as well, is the idea that we're the hub of the wheel instead of the last spoke. And a lot of women have such a hard time with the idea of putting themselves first. But when I say to a woman, tend to your own garden first so that you have more harvest for others, that's exactly what you're talking about. So that self-care and that self-nurturing inside means that you have more to share. And the woman's natural tendency is to nurture her village, to nurture her family, and to see others as a family. So I hope that we move more in the direction of the sacred divine feminine, because I just, among other things, it will mean we have more of our young men in the world, because fewer of them will be killed in wars.
Are we still doing that? And that's another one of those concepts as a little girl. Like, so we're still killing each other? Like, we're still raping and pillaging? Is that what we're doing? Like, what? And so as advanced as we think we are, the newest app or the newest thing that, saves the thing, the newest vaccine, don't get me started, the newest, don't get me started, all that doesn't matter. If one of the other things I took when we were in Egypt were the creation stories and some of the other stories that looked really familiar to what we've been reading in our sacred texts, right? And that there's some stuff that we still haven't figured out, and it's right there for us. Like, and I think more of the sacred divine feminine means that there's an opportunity for us to thrive, last, grow, ascend. Like, let us have a chance, fellas, just let us have a chance. Let us have a chance this time. And who knows what will happen. We've seen what's happened since you've had it this long. Let me in there. You know what I mean? Throw me in the game, boss, or coach, or whatever. Throw me in the game, coach. Right? Don't you find there are women who are like, just let me at him. Let me, I'm ready. I've been training for this. I've been training because I've been behind the scenes really running things anyway. Right? The woman who runs her household in this particular way. There's a reason why my baby brother turned out to be an awesome man. My father, they were divorced. My brother was 7. My mother raised an awesome young man who was, he's young man, he's 50 something years old now, but he was respectful and kind and a great protector of his family and all those things. And it's because this woman was behind the scenes doing what she had to do. And so I'm excited about that possibility. Like, let us in the room and it's going to be a really good room.
Well, I'm so grateful that you came on today. So grateful. And I just love our conversations under any circumstances. So we really went everywhere today, and that's all
we
good.
did. Can I just say something about you? Speaking of the divine woman, I remember watching you handle your business while we were on this trip. You were co-leading a trip, but you were the expert on the trip, right? You were the expert of all things Egypt and moving things. And I would watch you, and you didn't know you were being watched. I was watching you move the pieces and make sure that things would happen and do it with such grace and style. And after it was over, you go like, you have no idea what just happened and what we just did and what we made, what we moved so that this could happen. But I never saw you sweat, and maybe because you've been there enough times and your body, gets used to it, or literally and figuratively, you did it all with grace and never losing your feminine self. Like you didn't have to yell or get, and that, because that wouldn't work with those, that doesn't work with guys anyway, but you were effective and handled business and made sure that things moved smoothly, all while staying in your power. And it was really fun to watch happen. Really fun to watch happen.
Oh, well, thank you so much for saying that. So is now a good time to mention that you're coming back to Egypt with me?
Coming back to Egypt with the new man. What?
With your man.
I'm so excited. I've been craving it since I left. I've been talking about it since I left. When they just moved all the mummies, I was watching all the mummies move, Oh yeah, I know where you're going, because we had visited that museum before it even opened. And so to see, some of the treasures before the world has had to see them was such a privilege. And so I'm coming back and I'm so excited. And this is a lesson on letting go how things will show up, letting go how it will look. I thought that my next trip to Egypt would be me leading a trip. I was so inspired by you and so inspired by Elizabeth and inspired by our guide, Sameh, that I wanted to lead my own trip. I learned so much and learned so much truth, so much of the truth, that I wanted to lead my own group there. And I thought, the next time I go, it's going to be me leading my own trip. That it's not happening that way first. What's happening first is I'm going with you and I'm bringing my man, and I think we're bringing 2 or 3 friends with us.
That's
because
awesome.
And so much more. Like I haven't even put it out to my community yet, which I will do. So I may end up, being like a little side hustler with my own people coming, to your trip. I'm so excited about coming back and seeing it, anew. And so what can you tell me about this trip that will be different about the trip that we took? It's always different. You've been 21 times, right?
27. This will be trip 28.
Gotcha.
So yeah. But this trip is different because it's it's called Egypt Awakening, Sacred Divine Union. And it is a trip for men and for women. And it also is a trip for the unity of ourselves. The idea that we are both 100% masculine and 100% feminine inside of us. And so having that balance inside of us of being fully in our divine masculine and fully in our sacred divine feminine at the same time, and that it's safe to do that both for men and for women. So I'm super, super excited about doing that. And of course, all the temples and all the chakras and all the things. So that trip is October 14th through the 27th. So I hope you will consider joining us for that. And Kim, thank you so much for being here. If this episode has spoken to you, and I hope that it has, I hope that you will share it with everyone that you know. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, subscribe to the podcast of your choice on whatever platform you would like. And I will see you next time. Thank you again so much, Kim. All right. Blessings, everyone.
You have just listened to another enlightening and transforming episode of Your Goddess Awakened with Halle Eavelyn. We hope you enjoyed your time with us and join us again next time so you can continue your journey towards a full transformation. For additional resources and to learn more about working with Halle Eavelyn, visit halleeavelyn.com. Receive more, do less, and love your life. Only here on Your Goddess Awakened.